install the BN-180 GPS module into my quadcopter. So this is just a 4-wire connector that connects to the BN-180 module. So let me go ahead and tin my wires first. These wires are going to be soldered onto the flight controller. There's a connector on the other end, and then the connector will just install right into the BN-180 GPS module. I always like to start with nice tinned wires. Helps the solder flow a little bit better. And I'm going to just nip these off fairly short because the pads on the flight controller are pretty small. I don't want a lot of excess wire hanging out. So this is one of the Mamba flight controllers from Diatone, and they've got a fairly nice pad layout here with a 5-volt ground and transmitter 3 and receiver 3 for UART 3. I'm just going to solder my wires onto each one of these. The first thing I'm going to do is tin each one of my pads so they're ready to accept my new wire. Go ahead and get this done. Got a pretty big blob of solder on my soldering iron. Make sure I don't get that all over the place. I'm going to start with the TX3 pad. Now, the most important thing to remember is that the transmit pad I'm soldering to here needs to go to the receiver pin on the connector. So we're kind of reversing transmit to receive and receive to transmit. So I'm going to go ahead and solder the transmit pad on. And I'm going to do the receiver wire onto the receiver pad. And like I said, remember this is the transmitter connector on the BN-180 module. This wire is going to the receiver pad on my flight controller. Tack that down just a little bit better. Solder the ground wire. And finally the 5-volt power wire. And just to make sure that I don't have any excess flux laying around in there, I'm going to use my toothbrush and clean this up pretty good. Get as much flux off of there as I possibly can. I'm going to try to keep my wires kind of nice and tidy by just twisting them around. Plus with the receiver and transmitter, it's nice to have a twisted pair anyway. Alright, so here's my BN-180 GPS module. Just going to go ahead and plug it in, just make sure that we're correct on the connector. And it just pops right in. And I designed and printed a TPU mount, so I'm going to mount that in that, making sure that the antenna, which is this side, is pointing up towards the sky. So that's fairly important so you get a good GPS lock. So now that GPS module's installed, it's time to just put the rest of my components back in. I'm going to put my VTX back on top of my stack. pop in there. There you go. Go ahead and secure it down with the nuts. Alright, now that the VTX is installed, I'm going to plug my camera back in. A little bit fiddly. Now the camera's in, I'll put the top plate back into position. Alright, top plate secured. All the parts are back in where they're supposed to be, and the GPS unit is installed. Next thing we need to do is light it up and make sure it can start acquiring satellites.